Inside the Plan with the 401k Brothers is a production of Horizon Retirement Plans, a division of Horizon Financial Group. Bill and Andy Bush are indeed brothers, but are not twins. Hello and welcome to Inside the Plan with the 401k Brothers. I'm Brother Bill.
And I'm Brother Andy.
Andy, here we are in a new year, and that brings a sense of optimism.
Yes, it does. It's the new year, the new you, Bill.
And I know as we ended out last year, we talked about some year-end things to wrap up and possibly looking at toward the new year. But here we are now. We've landed.
We are here.
And of course, we like to talk about on this particular podcast about behavior and savings and how those intertwine.
Yeah, and then again, kind of an encouragement, a little education on what it takes, but also an encouragement for people to maybe alter their behavior a little bit so that they will have better outcomes for themselves.
And we also talked about a tool that we've rolled out to some of our retirement plans, and we're continuing to do that plan by plan as the new year starts, and that is the Passport, which is available on the Horizon website. It's a little quick sort of exercise you can take that has a lot to deal with mindsets.
Yeah, and mindset's a big thing. Not just in that Passport piece, it doesn't just deal with the financial mindsets. It's also just looking at your social life, relationships, how you're approaching life in general, but also it does address, I guess, a couple of the financial side of things.
Yeah, and you came across a piece from Goldman Sachs that talked about retirement mindset.
Yeah, mainly this was looking at what are the more optimal mindsets that people have adopted or already have that lend to better retirement savings.
Okay.
And so that I thought, there's probably a little bit of a blend there in between the Passport piece and the Goldman Sachs piece.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of walk through some of their findings and just off the bat. So over 5,200 folks were surveyed.
That's a good amount.
Yeah. Some of them, a good many of them still working. So over 3,600 still working, 1,500, a little bit over that, retired already. And so some interesting findings, and hopefully this resonates with you, the listener, and maybe it will spur you on to some action.
Yeah.
And I think there were 4 behavioral factors that they really looked at. And one of them was optimism.
Yeah. Being optimistic about, and I think that speaks to kind of your mindset towards the future, right? You're optimistic about what can happen. Obviously, you play a part in that. It just doesn't come out of thin air. Your retirement nest egg takes work and effort. Yeah, I was actually talking to Caitlin in our office yesterday about that, and just about how saving for retirement is it's not necessarily like building a habit, if you would, with your physical health. You really have to build habits. Like if you want to run a 5K, you have to start building up the habit of regularly running and adding length to that run. With retirement, what happens a lot for people is they set whatever their amount is, the percentage is that they're going to contribute, and then it just happens. It pulls out of it's painless in the sense of it pulls out of their paycheck. And so you're not necessarily establishing a habit there. But a habit could be that you increase your percentage once a year. Once a year, you push it up 1 more percent until you get to a healthy percent that you're saving. And so that could be a habit.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the optimism side, it is, it takes your work to do it, but you are also optimistic about the outcome and the results of the work you put into it.
Future orientation was another one. We talk about this a lot, the connectivity to your future self.
Yeah.
Realizing that, hey, you're benefiting yourself by doing this.
Yeah, and we've all probably identified and met folks that live more in the past, right? And we've also identified people that have lived just for the here and now, right? With just totally jeopardizing what their future life could be like. And so, like I always tell folks, is right now you're going to your job, you're earning you some money, and you're paying for lights and you're paying for your car note or your insurance or your food on the table, all the stuff that you have to pay for in retirement, you're not going to be earning anymore. But you're going to need some money to pay for those things. The bills are going to be there.
Yeah, the next behavioral factor is risk reward orientation, the pursuit of goals by focusing on security versus achievement. This is likely to change as you age, that risk reward.
Sure. Yeah. But in order, if you kind of understand, hey, what asset classes have done better over longer periods of time, which younger folks definitely have longer periods of time until retirement, you'd want to expose yourself to those. Now, that comes with risk, and we've talked about that. One of our early episodes was understanding risk and reward.
Yeah. And then the fourth one that they cite in its behavioral factor is financial literacy. And that is just understanding the basics. Right?
Yeah, no doubt. And so, I've done a lot of different research along those lines to see how to best present a financial wellness package to the plans that we work with. And everybody's background is different. And so the environment that they grew up in is different. The words that they heard from their parents or their significant role models growing up, if they had them, some people just didn't have many. That plays a huge role in their outcome and their desire to learn about finances.
Yeah. So this survey had top 10 takeaways, and we're just going to go through those.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So number one is one's intentions to reach retirement preparedness does not always match the retirement savings outcome. Yet future generations expect personal savings to account for a larger percentage of income.
Yeah. And so you had mentioned before we got on the air here about overall personal savings rates have come down. Now, COVID year, remember they were sky high. Yes. They were 15%.
You couldn't spend money.
Yeah. They were 15%. And now what would you say they were?
4? Around 4, hovering around there.
Yeah. Which is dreadfully low. You know,
that's right.
It really is pretty low if you want to have enough money in the future to have the option to retire.
Yeah. So we go back to our saying savings rates matter.
Savings rates matter. And I think the other takeaway in those words you just spoke of, number one, is the intention versus the reality. There's a little bit of maybe there might be some folks that have this magical thinking of, hey, my ship's going to come in. I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to inherit money. All those kinds of mindsets, or something's positive's going to happen where I'll have the money. You better not count on that. You better do your work. And then if that happens, it's lagniappe.
Right. Number 2, those with optimal behaviors have an easier time preparing for retirement. Having high optimism, high future orientation, high financial literacy, and reward orientation correlates with higher savings, more engagement, and more comfort navigating competing priorities. That's the optimism thing.
Yeah, and I mean that last word, priorities. I mean, that's the huge part of that. You package those 4 pieces together of the optimism and the future, envisioning that, connecting with it, the risk reward. When you look at that and the high financial literacy, then they understand, if I want this in the future, I've got to do this now. And I've got to continue to do it year after year after year after year.
Yeah. Number 3 is those with high optimism actually take more action.
Yeah.
Correlation there.
Yeah. I think the correlation there is that people with optimism tend to be a little more proactive. Now, some of their action may not be the best action,
right?
And they may need to consult with a financial professional to make sure that they got their ship pointed in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that if you are optimistic, make sure that your actions are all going towards the thing you actually want in the future.
Number 4, I don't think there's much of a surprise here. Those with strong future orientation save more. So that's the folks that can actually clearly identify, hey, what's the future look like? I need to start saving. Or
I think we've cited the study where they did an MRI of a person. Maybe it was a different CAT scan. I can't remember which kind of medical scan it was, but they showed how their brain moved or thought when they thought of a stranger versus someone they know. And when they thought of their future self, a lot of folks saw them as a stranger that there was no consequence towards. And so I think that's important. When you have that connection, you do end up caring about that person.
Number 5 kind of gets into financial literacy a bit, in that savers threatened most by the financial vortex want some professional help in investing. And the qualities that make savers most vulnerable also correlated with an interest in what we see a lot of plans have as automatic features or guaranteed income options, something that they can get the easy button, if you will.
Yeah, I think the vortex is there's a lot out there that can confuse the heck out of people and misdirect them, misguide them. And I think, what people want is that assurance. They want to know, if I use this automatic feature, then my savings rate is enough, or that it should be enough for the future me. And on the flip side, taking the income from they're a little bit scared of running out of money, right? And so they're used to taking a paycheck for 40 some odd years of working. And so why not just have a regularly scheduled income? And so those are the things that you would need to sit with a financial professional and have a conversation about what makes you tick and what are you fearful of.
Number 6 is lower financial literacy respondents are more action oriented. A little surprised there, but what it goes on to say is increasing savers' engagement in the retirement preparation. If you pair that with financial education and advice, so long as those actions that are taken are well informed and effective. So they feel like I need to do something, I will do something. But then more educated they are, the better the outcome.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's that action towards what, and making sure that they're taking action towards the right things. And so that's what they're looking for.
Number 7, savers become more risk averse in retirement. Of course, you've worked a long career and you've saved a nest egg, and you hate to see any part of that go to the market losses. You want to see it all go into your pocket as much as possible.
Yeah, if you've been investing for long enough, at least 15 years, you can remember 2008. And there's a lot of folks my age and a little older that reference 2008 and is this going to happen again? And so if you definitely don't want to put your big nest egg in harm's way of something like that, and so you spread your, you diversify, spread your risk out, and make sure that, kind of the saying we have is, you're not going to hit homers all the time, but you're going to get the singles and doubles.
Yeah. Number 8 is the most vulnerable savers have 4 traits in common. And, we talked about the 4 behaviors. Well, here are the 4 traits that the most vulnerable savers have: low optimism, low future orientation, low financial literacy, and risk rather than reward orientation. Yeah. And so those folks reported most stress, lower savings, less engagement in their retirement preparation.
Yeah, well, think about it. They focus on the risk, so they're scared. They're led by fear rather than abundance and opportunity. The low optimism is, when I read that, I see pessimistic, and pessimistic is negative. And so some of those, that's what I said earlier about folks. We know a lot of folks, you probably do too, that might live in the past. People that live in the past tend to be negative and less optimistic about here and now or the future.
Well, those were always the good old days.
The good old days. That's right.
Yeah. Even though they probably weren't.
And it is interesting. Morgan Housel, who we've talked about before on his podcast, mentioned John D. Rockefeller was the richest man in, was it 1920s or early part of the 1900s. And he said this, he said, so compared to everybody at that time, he's just saying wealth is relative. To compare to everything at that time, he had access to the best of the best.
Yeah.
But guess what he didn't have access to? Advil. He didn't have access to sunscreen.
Yeah.
He didn't have
Wi-Fi.
Yeah. I mean, all the things.
Right.
And so you think of the comforts that we have, or the advantages we have over the richest guy in the world back then, that he never had. And they're more commonplace now.
Number 9, interesting one here. Product preferences can align with retirement mindset. So what they mean here is those with more action-oriented, proactive, optimistic attitudes. They tend to want options.
Yeah.
Right? They seek a broader range of services, tools, investments, whatever, to help manage their savings.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And so you're, when it comes to retirement income, you're solving for income, but it doesn't have to come from just one source. It can come from a variety of things. And so that's, I think too, when we deal with, we work with business owners, and we work with C-suite successful folks, and we work with everybody from the secretary in between, right? And it's interesting because those that have a higher education level, they listen to some of the outlets and hear some of the words. And so they ask questions about this or that option of investing. And so we have conversations about it, and we're kind of a sounding board, if you will, in many ways, particularly if they engage with us on a advice level, doing advisory work for them. Will definitely be a sounding board to tell them, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, or no, don't do that.
Yeah. And finally, number 10 is savings can be buoyed by a positive view of the future. When people know what they're saving for and believe they can achieve it, this reinforces their motivation to save.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We all hope for a brighter future. And I think those that actually are willing to work towards it are the ones that are going to find probably the better success. Like I said, that kind of eliminates the thought of the ships coming in or some magic's going to happen and it's just going to be there. And you got to be intentional about that. The other thing is being realistic. We talked about prior to the recording is kind of looking back, and the fourth quarter, I had a couple folks that were closer to me. One was a mentor and one was my father-in-law, that passed away.
Right.
And I talked about reading their obituaries. Nowhere in there did it mention he had this kind of a house or drove this kind of a car or wore these kinds of clothes. It wasn't about any of the material stuff. It was about the impact he had on people, and the things that they accomplished that helped other people, know, and that was mainly it. It was not necessarily this list of achievements that were only for himself or either one of them. It was how they impacted the community. And I think that's important, is that balance of living in the here and now,
right,
and enjoying your life. But we've talked about before is what kind of things bring you fulfillment. If you're expecting that material things will bring fulfillment and bring you some great identity, that stuff can all be taken from you quickly, whatever kind of a way. But your character and your values and your traits are all things that you can pass on to other folk. And so that's a little less about money, but also making sure you have a balance of saving for the future and enjoying the here and now, and not jeopardizing either one.
Okay. Well, that's a good conversation on the retirement mindset matters piece that Goldman Sachs came out with. We do want to offer you, if you'd like to do the expansion passport or the walkaway passport, those are the two quick exercises on mindset.
Yeah.
And it has to do with some financial aspects of your life, but also just some thinking about other things too.
Yeah. And beginning of the year is a great time to do it. It's assessing where you are, and you're identifying, and you're doing the survey yourself, but you're identifying, hey, where am I and how am I doing and what needs attention?
Yeah. So you can find those assessments on the Horizon website, www.horizonfg.com. It's on the front page right now. Scroll down, introducing the passport package. The expansion passport is for those 45 and younger. And that, by the way, the survey actually exists on horizonfg.com/expand for 45 and younger. And then there's the walkaway passport for those that are over 45. That's horizonfg.com/walkaway.
Walk away.
So take that. You get a nice report that it is basically where you are now, assessing where you are now, and setting goals for the future.
Yeah.
Get a nice report based on your responses.
There you go.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Inside the Plan with the 401k Brothers. I'm Brother Bill.
And I'm Brother Andy.
We are brothers,
but not twins.
The opinions of the hosts and guests of this podcast are for general information purposes only and are not to be construed as specific advice or recommendations for any individual. You should consult with a qualified financial professional to determine what is appropriate for you. The advisors of Horizon Financial Group offer securities and advisory services through Cetera Advisors, member FINRA SIPC. Cetera Advisors is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Horizon Financial Group, 8280 YMCA Plaza Drive, Building 5, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810. Advisors of Horizon are registered representatives of Cetera Advisors, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor.